All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Taanis Daf Chav Vav. We left off on Daf Chafei Amid Beis. We are in the last narrow line. We are referring back to the Mishnah. As we had in the Mishnah Machlokes between the Tanach and Rabbi Eliezer, what happens if we began a fast day? The rain falling, says the Tanach, before Netzachama, will allow us to not fast for the rest of the day, as we spoke out when we learned the Mishnah, that even though the Isur of eating begins from Alois HaShachar, but the Tanach holds that the fast, you can't say that you're fasting by not eating before the Nates. No one eats before the Nates. So since you didn't begin technically fasting, you are allowed to eat. But if you were fasting, that means the rain only fell after Nates, Yashlimu, and the Mishnah quoted the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, who holds same concept, but regarding Chatzoitz. Koren Chatzoitz or after Chatzoitz. I do want to point out that if you look at the Mishnah on Daf Yutes, you're going to see that it's also this Perek, one Mishnah, and the whole Perek is Gemara. And the same thing will be in Perek Revi. However, in Perek Revi, and the next Perek that God willing will begin today, Staka, the compiler of our Gemara, put one Mishnah, made everything into one Mishnah. And again, Gemara until the end of the Masechta, a few daf, will be explaining the Mishnah. It looks to me like on Daf Yutes, there was a Machlokes in Gersois. I know in my Gemara, there's like a brackets when it comes to the section of the Mishnah that we are focusing on right now. Perhaps other people, instead of having just the two dots, had that entire Mishnah. And what we will learn, and we'll conclude the third chapter with that, is we're going to have a Braisa that's going to quote not only the same Machlokes, attributing these opinions to other Tanoim. We'll see Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, but in the Braisa there's actually going to be a third Shita regarding this question of, at a certain point, you have to complete a fast. Question is, what is that point? So as we'll see, Nates, Chatzois, and the 9th hour in the day. Now, God willing, we're going to start today on Daf Chavav, the final Perek, the 4th Perek, the Shloisha Prakim. We're going to learn clearly in the beginning more about the Ma'amodois, that's in plural, or the Maimod, and we'll explain it in greater length. Aside of having the Kohanim divided into 24 Mishmaros, the Leviim also divided into 24 Mishmaros. Yisraelim were divided into 24 Ma'amodos. Ma'amodos means to stand and to watch the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, but it's a lot more than that. We'll explain it when we learn the Mishnah. We're going to see, especially the way Rashi teaches the Mishnah in a more literal way, that members of the Maimed that stood in the Beis HaMikdash to observe the avodah of the Karbonos wasn't only from Yisraelim, it was actually Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. However, there was another group of only Yisraelim that remained in their cities, and there was a beautiful type of Tefilla, the Maimed service that was added, as well as fasting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as we'll see when we learn the Mishnah. The Mishnah will also introduce us to the Korban Eitzim. When the second Beis HaMikdash was built in the beginning, as we also already learned together, I know that the Persians paid for the maintenance. We learned about Daryavesh, that we called him Kuresh, then we called him back Daryavesh. When he was a Melech Kosher, he was paying for the Beis HaMikdash. Even later, he kept on paying, but he did it, the Shaloi Lishma, as we learned in the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. There was one area in the daily temple maintenance where there was a lack, and that was in wood. We also, if you remember in the Sugya and Gittin regarding the Churban, right, the one who promised to give wood was 60 times wealthier, if I'm not mistaken, than the one who promised to give the flour, because you need, right, for one storage house of grain, I think you need 60 storage houses of wood. So there was a lack of wood, and there were 9 families, as we will learn, that donated the wood. Now, even though that initially each family donated wood for a certain period of time, which is why when that wood ran out, there was another family that volunteered. Certain families gave more wood, so it lasted for longer, as we'll see. Certain families gave less wood, it lasted for shorter. But even later, when the Beis HaMikdash was raising from the Chatzi Shekel enough funds for the wood, but the families were zoicha on that day that they initiated to give that donation, them and their children and their grandchildren, all the way until the end of the second Beis Hamikdash, it was their private holiday. They were allowed to bring the wood on that day, as well as they were not allowed to fast, they were not allowed to make a eulogy. And we will see how these 9 Yomim Tovim are connected to the topic of our Mishnah, which is the topic primarily about the Ma'amados and the services that they did not have to perform on the days that there were many karbanos. Since on those days there were more karbanos, so they were exempt of some of their unique service. And the final part of the Mishnah, which will also be the siyum in Mishnayos of Masechtas Taanis, will be both telling us about what happened on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, what we are familiar with this Mishnah, that Chamisha Devarim Iru Es Avisenu V'Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and similarly there were 5 other tragic events that took place on Tisha B'Av, and the Mishnah to end on Mesaymin B'Toiv on a happier note tells us that Lo Yehoyo Yomim Tovim LiYisrael KeChamisha Asar B'Av, and like Yom HaKippurim. And we'll see how far we can get, but the beginning of the Gemara will tell us about a machloikas tanoim regarding during how many tefillos do the kohanim offer us the birchas kohanim, or b'lashon haMishnah, nesias kapayim happens during how many of the prayers of the day. So we're going to begin the Perek by quoting the Shita that we will see, a Shita Rabbi Meir. Every single time there is a daytime tefillah, never maitiv, but every daytime tefillah. So if there's musaf and if there's ne'ilah, then they would always duchen, and we will see other 2 opinions of the Tanoim as to when we do duchen and when don't we duchen. We're going to conclude. Okay, we'll see how far we're going to get, but there's jam-packed dafim. But let's finish now this beautiful 3rd chapter again. Daf Chafei Amid Beis, the last narrow line. Either the Mishnah was inserted here, or we are referring back to the 2-way machlokas Tanakama Rabbi Eliezer, quoting, just reading the words that that if they were fasting, but even before the nates, the rain came, then you're not mashlum, you can break your fast. If it rained only after nates, then the Tanakama holds you have to finish the fast until the end of the day. And the Tana Rabbi Eliezer has the same idea, but he inserts it in Chatzos. So now, Tana Rabbanan, we learned a more elaborate, actually 3-way machlokes. The Yordolehem Geshamim Koidem Neitzachama Lo Yashlimu La'acha Neitzachama Yashlimu. This is what we had in the Mishnah attributed stam, anonymous. Here we see in the Braysa, this is Divrei Rabbi Meir, and it fits stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, it's interesting, our Mishnah attributes this Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Eliezer. They held the same opinion. Here we quote Rabbi Yehuda that it's Koidem Chatzoitz Lo Yashlimu. In other words, since most people don't properly eat before Chatzos anyways, so them not eating is not considered that they are already fasting, which is why they don't have to, they can eat. But if it's already after midday, even though the reason for the fast went away, thank God if the rains fell, but Yashlimu, you have to complete your fast. And now we have the 3rd opinion, Rabbi Yosi Omer, Koidem Tes Sho'ois Lo Yashlimu. Same concept, but he puts it even further. Now, where do we get the secret of the 9th hour of the day? So first of all, the Braisa Rabbi Yossi quotes a pasuk. Just a little bit of background that the wicked king Achav with his wife Izebel that conspired to get the fields of Nevoyos, who did not want to sell it to them, by Mamish conspiring and having people testify falsely that he was avoided the Malchus, and they had him killed. And Elyahu Navi came ahead and he told Achav that him and his descendants are going to be wiped out. Achav's response then was of humility. And therefore, Achav Melech Yisrael, that after he heard the words, the prediction of Elyahu Navi, he reacted by right away starting to fast. And it says over there, he only began fasting from the 9th hour of the day. Why did he begin fasting only from the 9th hour of the day? So here Rashi enlightens us. Rashi, 22 lines before the bottom of the Amid. First of all, we spoke about most people not eating properly until the first 6 hours of the day go by. Happens to be, we're just putting 2 things together, that B'nai Malachim get up 3 hours after Nates. And only after they get up do they begin counting their 6 hours for them to have a proper meal. We're not speaking about a break fast or a coffee. We're speaking about eating a real seudah. So they normally would begin eating only in the 9th hour of the day. When Achav heard from Elyahu Navi what's going to happen, so he decided, I'm not going to fast. Kind of shows beginning from the 9th hour of the day until the end. And it's called a fast. Shenamar, as it says, this is what Elyahu told God Almighty, that Hare Esa, did you see, Keilu, as if God didn't see, that Kenichna Achav, that Ach humbled himself, and the fact that the Torah says, Baited in the Psukim, that he fasted, is that ayah that the concept of Vaya Melech only begins eating until the 9th hour of the day, and therefore we can all, we're all B'nai Malachim, perhaps, says Rabbi Yossi, and if the rain fell before the 9th hour, we can't say that we really began to fast. Anyways, the B'nai Melech wouldn't properly eat, so you don't have to be mashlim, but after the 9th hour of the day, then l'kula alma, you have to be mashlim. All right, so now that we have the three machlokes, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah gozer Tanisa because of a lack of rain. And the rain came. When did it come? The Yordul and Geshamim la'achanetzachamom. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Nisiyah initially wanted to follow the Tanakama. He wanted to follow the Shita of Rav Meir, and therefore he felt since it only began to rain after Neit Sover La'ash Lu Minu. However, Amalei Rav Ami, that we don't paskin like Rav Meir. Koidem Chatzois, Ba'achar Chatzois Shoninu. And since the rain fell before Chatzois, you can't say that we really began to fast, and therefore, actually, he followed the psak din of Rebbe in our Mishnah. In the Brisa, it's Rabbi Yehuda, and in the Mishnah, it is Rabbi Eliezer.
Rabbi,
right. Yes.
Is there a problem with finishing the fast, or it's just about you're allowed to break the fast?
No problem, but you're allowed to. In other words, according to Rabbi Meir, you're mechuyev to finish the fast. Says Rav Ami, you can't tell other people. You're not mechuyev because we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer of the Mishnah, which is Rabbi Yehuda of the Brisa. Another story, Shmuel HaKatan. Right, Shmuel HaKatan is the one that instituted the daily V'la Malshinim. If you remember that sugya, V'la Malshinim was already enacted way before, but it was only said sometimes. Shmuel HaKatan felt that because of the advent of the Tzedukim and the Vaisusim, which became the Christians and the Catholics, that it should be said every day. Has to be said every day. So Shmuel HaKatan gozer Taanis. And here again, they were answered. When were they answered? V'yordulem kishonim, koidem aneitz. Koidem aneitz, my friends, l'kula alma, you can break your fast. Now, kesfurim ha'am leimar. Now we're not focusing on whether you have to break the fast, whether you are allowed to break the fast or not. People interpreted the fact that the rains fell mamish even before Neitz. Wow, shuvachai shel tziburu. This means that the tzibur is so praiseworthy that God right away responded to them. So Amar Lahem, Shmuel HaKatan was a man of Gevura. He said, no, and he gave them the following analogy. So you're a servant, you want to receive something from your master, and the master so dislikes the Eved, the master doesn't even want to hear the Eved's request. So there are times that the master gives whatever is coming to the Eved prior to his request, Amalahem to Nulai. Give it to him even before, because Va'al Eshma Koile, I don't want to hear his voice. So it doesn't mean just because the rain fell before Neitzachama that's a sign that the tzibur is so worthy. Another story similar in the sense that Shmuel HaKatan interpreted events in a very non-positive way. Shmuel HaKatan Gazer Tanisa, and here, when the rain fell, not after Tzeis, but already after Shkia. After all of the prayers of the day. So now, based on the first story, here it means we're good. Hashem wanted to hear all of our prayers. Like that, it should be consistent with this prior interpretation. No, again, now he came with a new analogy. That when you have an Eved that's being mavakesh his paras from his rabbi, if the rabbi is dissatisfied with the Eved, he tells the one in charge of giving him his payment, give it to him at the end of the day. For him to be more humble, for him to be more anguished. And only then give it to him. The fact that Hashem waited mamash until the end of the day, okay, it's better than Hashem not wanting to hear our prayers to begin with, but it doesn't speak about the awesomeness of the tzibur. So the Gemara wants to know whether every scenario would be interpreted by Shmuel not positively. If there is such a thing, and the Gemara says yes, even according to Shmuel HaKatan, that if we begin to pray Shachris, not before Nates, but in the first prayer when the Bal Tefilla says Mashiv Faruach, as we have many stories above, immediately the Nashav Zeka, and when the Bal Tefilla, when the Shliach Tzibur says the words Moedat Hageshem, right away the rain begins to come, a immediate response, that's the indication of the Shavach of the Tzibur. Okay, very good. The last line in the Amid. Right, the Mishnah concluded our Mishnah Daf Yutes that Ma'aseh v'Gozru Taanis Belud, and there, as we learned, that they Taka decided that you are allowed to break your fast. However, that's with Rab Tarfin, but the Oilam came back in the afternoon to say Halal Hagadol, which is the Hilum Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav, Kilo Oilam Chazdoi, including the pasuk Noisem Lechem L'chol Basa. So the question is, if they found it important to express gratitude for the fact that God gave rain by saying Halal Hagadol, so we learned that new din, beautiful. But why did people go home to eat? Before you go back to eat. And Rab Tarfin, like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Eliezer, the case in the Mishnah was that it rained before Chatzos. So answers the Gemara, Lefi she'ein oimrim halal, guys, today's daf chavav ela al nefesh seveya v'keres meleya. Dafke this capital, like Rashi says, since you have in it the words noisin lechem l'chol basar, noisin lechem l'chol basar, you can't say that when you're hungry. That's why Rav Tarfon wanted them to go home, and then they came back to say halal hagadol. Now the Gemara says, hold on, is that true? It happened once that Rav Papa went into the Beis HaKnesses, to the Beit Mishnah, the Abi Goivar, Rashi writes, either it's the name of a person, that was the name of the synagogue, or it's the name of the place, and there was a problem with rain because of Tanisa, and they were answered before Chatzos, and again, we're passing like Rabbi Yehuda, we're passing like Rabbi Eliezer, and Rav Papa made sure that they say halal first, and only then, B'acharkach oslo v'shasu. You just told me that you don't say Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav on a hungry stomach. So the Gemara says there was a competing value, that since this Avi Goivar, even if it's the name of a place, it's like a little neighborhood in the larger place called Mechuzah. People in Mechuzah, the Peder concludes the Shchicha B'hu Shichrus. It was relatively more common for people to overdrink. And what's wrong with overdrinking? That, as we will learn, that's the connection to the next Pedic. That when you drink, they're gonna daven, they're gonna do Birchas Kohanim in their Tefilla. And when a Kohen goes to give Birchas Kohanim, he may not do it under the influence. So the way I understand is that he told them to stay. And Rashi writes that they're going to get drunk and they won't even say it. But maybe once they already stayed there for Halal HaGadol, if they really sung it out, they chapta mincha gedoyla and they had a birchas kohanim. Maybe. Anyways, with that we say, Hadran Allah say that tiniest, what a pedic this is. Unbelievable. We should be zecher to go back and to properly understand it. And now let's begin with the fourth and the final chapter.
So, Rabbi, just to clarify that, the halal that they said, that's a thanks for the rain coming.
Yes.
So normally you would say it afterwards, and here they said it before they ate. Okay.
That place, correct, because they would get drunk. Okay, begins the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "B'shloisha prakim bashana kohanim noisen as kapayim." Nesias kapayim, literally meaning lifting of the hands, is another expression that we use regarding the special mitzvah and the bracha that the kohanim give now during the davening. When the Mishnah says that 3 times in the year we have kohanim are noisen as kapayim, the truth is they're noisen as kapayim every day. They're noisen as kapayim arba pamim bayoim 4 times during the day. That's the chiddush. And as we will see in the Gemara, that's also not a correct translation, because let's read the 3 times and we'll see how it doesn't fit. And what's the 4 times in the day? Right, 3 times: Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah Sha'arim. What are the 3 times in the year? Betainias, as we are learning, that's number 1. During fast days, we daven more. Truth is, during fast days, Really, it's during the middle and the final 7 is where we add Ne'ilah. Ma'amodois, as we'll speak out soon, that there was a special Ma'amodois service, prayer, more than the normal Shemona Esreis. And number 3 on Yom Kippur. And the obvious problem is, and the Gemara is going to point it out on Chavav Amid Beis, that on Yom Kippur we takadaven Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. But on Taanis and Ma'amodos, we don't have 4 prayers. So by Taanis, we add the Ne'ilah, but we don't have Musaf. So that's the big problem. And therefore, just the taich will be that B'shloisha Prakim Bashana, we're going to duchen, even though we are adding more Shemona Esreis. And as we will see, not everyone subscribes to it. There are other Tanaim that hold that you only duchen Shachris and Musaf. So that's every Shabbos, whenever the Shachris and Musaf, every Rosh Chodesh, whenever the Shachris and Musaf, you duchen. Chiddush of this Tana, which will be Rav Meir against Tam Nishma Rav Meir, is that every single time during the day that you daven Shemona Esrei, and 3 times in the year, it's more than your regular Shachris and Mincha, whether it's Shachris, Musaf and Mincha, whether it's Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah, the Kohanim are going to do another detail. So that's the case. Why is it 3 times a year? Why not Shabbos and why not Shabbos? Every Shabbos you have 3 Shemona Esreis. The answer is because by Shabbos they will not duchen and mincha. We're going to get to this whole sugya. Any time where people are after a proper meal, they might be drunk, and a kohen may not duchen while he's under the influence. But during a fast day, and that includes the ma'amodos, as we will see that they fasted, therefore they, according to Rav Meir, they would taka duchen every time they daven. So now let's speak about the ma'amodos. So Elyahu ma'amodos. The word ma'amod means to stand at a station. And now what they did, we'll speak in a moment. Where does it come from? Says the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to speak about this unusual lashon. Not why do we need ma'amodos or what is ma'amodos. The Mishnah begins saying these, right? These are the ma'amodos, but really the Mishnah is giving a source for the need of a concept of having people standing at a station. It says, and we're quoting a pasuk in Pinchas. Now this pasuk is regarding the Talmud, Tzavis b'nei Yisrael, etc. Eskarbani lachmi, etc. From here we learn that what? That the Talmud is considered a carbon sibur. For those of us who learn shkalim, we appreciate this. Every Jew is a partner in the carbon Talmud. Now there's a problem. There's a challenge. When I bring a carbon, I have to stand there. It's not ma'akev, and I can send my carbon through a shliach. But it's definitely important and ideal for me to be standing watching the carbon being brought. And here the problem is, if every single Jew is a partner in the carbon Talmud, you can't have every single Yid standing and watching every day the carbon Talmud. It doesn't work. That's the problem. That's the reason why we created something called ma'amod in singular or ma'amodos in the plural. So therefore, Hiskinu Nevi'im Harishonim. I want you to know, it's good to remember this. Nevi'im Rishonim refers to, Rashi says, Shmuel and David. I'm saying it's good to remember this because you have other Chazals that speak about Nevi'im Rishonim, who enacted the laning of the Torah. No 3 days should go without laning of the Torah. I forgot the exact lashon, but it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu in the Gemara. I think the Rambam writes it was Moshe Rabbeinu. But I think the Chazal speak about the Nevi'im Rishonim. He was taka the first Navi, so to say, after we got the Torah. Here it means David and Shlomo. So before we go into the Ma'amod, we're going to speak about the Kohanim. The fact that there was a cycle of Kohanim and their families that happened also from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, but being that there were only few, the number 24 came about by the days of David and Shmuel and David. That they divided the Kohanim and the Levim into 24 groups. Every group is called a mishmar, and they would make a rotation. Now, I'll call mishmar or mishmar, like there was a mishmar during every mishmar, there was also hoyamaimed bi Yerushalayim. This is very important. Maimed really, lahavdil a million times. It's like the senators. You have those who stay in the capital, and you have those who stay in their home city or in their home state. They took it from here. So there were Yidden that were representatives that stood at a station to watch, representing us in the Beis HaMikdash, Yerushalayim, and there was also a group that stayed in every city. So the Mishnah here is beginning to speak about the group that stood in Yerushalayim, and this is the way Rashi learns. It's the pshat of the Mishnah that in Yerushalayim, don't think that the Anshe Maimad were only Yisraelim. No, the Anshe Maimad were Kohanim and Leviim and Yisraelim. Many Rishonim argue with Rashi, and they understand that the Kohanim and the Leviim is part of the Mishmar. Maimad is only Yisraelim. Rashi, if you look on Daf Tezvavam and Beis, the Feder says otherwise.
What's the rationale for that?
I don't know, Danny. I don't know. That's a good kasha. In other words, you want to have representatives. Since God divided the Jewish people into three groups, we want to have Kohanim that are representatives standing and observing. The Kohanim that are there during the service. I see a rationale. Okay, anyways.
Yeah, he says here the Ritva argues him.
Yeah, not all the Rishonim. If you want to just, I checked it up before. I mean, I don't have a Ritva. I have. If you go back to Daf Tezvavam and Beis. Look inside the Rashi. Divrei Masel Anshe Maimad. I'm reading Rashi. Rashi writes, "Echot Kohanim uLeviim b'Yisraelim hakavuyim v'oimdim u'mispalim al korban achiyam sheyakabel l'rotzim." They clear that there was representatives from Kohanim uLeviim Yisraelim, and when we say they stand, let me just add the words. They also daven. There was a service. There was a tefilla that they did, and that's going to be very negeya. But let's not jump the gun. So first of all, you had that. And they divided them into 24 groups. Now, Higia Zman Hamishmar Lalois. So what happened for that Mishmar? Kohanim uLeviim Oilem Yerushalayim. Right, this is the Mishmar. This line is even according to Rashi, because it's only Kohanim and Leviim. And V'Yisrael Sheba Oisa Mishmar Miskansim Liorein. Now you also have part of the special Yidden that were appointed to be our representatives. They did not go to Yerushalayim. They actually would gather in their cities. And now there's a lot in detail. There's not enough time, but there's a lot of nuance in our Mishnah. As always, just to be aware of it, as when the Mishnah begins to say regarding what they said and what they read, is the Mishnah referring to both groups, which is the way most of the Shainim learn. Perhaps some of it was only done for those who were in Yerushalayim, but let's begin reading the Mishnah. I want to go further. Many don't even have the Girsa right now. We're going to read the parentheses. Now, the Anshe Hamaimad Hoya Misanim, but the fasting that they would do would only be Arba'a Yamim B'Shavua, 4 days out of the week. What are the 4 days? Va'ad B'chlal, Yom Beis, including Monday, Va'ad Yom Chamishi, including Thursday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they would fast every day from morning until evening, from Alois until Tzeis. Now, why did they not fast on Friday? The Pnei Kavod Shabbos. If you remember in Eruvin, we learned this concept, that it's not proper to enter Shabbos when you're famished. And likewise, V'loi be'echad b'Shabbos, Kedei shelo yetzu mimenucha v'oinek liyigia v'Taanis. The contrast is too big from a day that you ate a lot and to go right into a fast. The Mishnah says words v'yamusu, whether v'yamusu means you can die, or whether v'yamusu means it's like, you're gonna be in a lot of pain. It's too drastic. By the way,
that's always the problem I have with some Gedalia, by the way, Rabbi.
With the Sunday diet, not good.
You go from Rosh Hashanah eating into some Gedalia fasting.
Here you go. Yeah, very good. Let me say like this: the Shiboli Haleket. I don't think we spoke it out. He says that when we learned that mitisha b'chodesh, with that whole sugya that there's a mitzvah to eat on the 9th, and whoever eats on the 9th, it's as if he fasted on the 9th and the 10th. The mitzvah of eating Erev Yom Kippur. So why is there a mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur? So normally you learn the pshat is eat on Erev Yom Kippur for you to have koyach to fast. The Shibali Haleket quotes this, and he says, no, the reason why Chazal says it's as if you fasted on the 9th and on the 10th, because there's a lot of tsar to be very drastic, and we all know this. People who don't have enough discipline, they always overeat every Erev Yom Kippur. They're probably hungrier on the night of Yom Kippur more than every other night of the year. And the Shibali Haleket says that was the purpose. You should eat a lot on Erev Yom Kippur for you to have more tsa'ar, more inoi by fasting on Yom Kippur. Gewaldige chaptis. Because the contrast is not comfortable. And God wanted us to make a contrast. So first of all, there's fast days. Let's go with most of the Rishonim. These fast days are done by those who were both in Yerushalayim and by those who stayed in their cities. Not only that, part of a special tefillah service, just say the word service, because reading the Torah is not a tefillah, that needed to be done by the Anshe Maimed, is that they would read the Torah. They would read the Torah. When would they read the Torah? Let's go that they would read the Torah all of the 6 days, not only clear, the Mishnah says. On the first day, on Sunday, they would read the first 2 days of creation, Bereshis, and then the second day begins with the words Yehirakia. And we have over here, just to clear, when you call up, every time you read, you call up 3 people. We're going to have this in Megillah. We're having this soon. If you're going to count, actually, you're going to see that the first day is 5 psukim, and the second day is 3 psukim. You don't even have 9. Now, the first day is longer than the second day, but they would do what we do, many people do today, Rosh Chodesh. Our MERCAVA is that you repeat a pasuk. They needed to do that. And more details in the Mishnah. So on the first day, they would read, you can't just read the first day, there's only 5 psukim, you need to have 9 psukim. So 8 becomes 9, but you can't begin with only 5. And Yehirakia. On Monday, you would read Yehirakia, which is the second day of creation, and Yukavu Hamayim is the first opening pasuk of the third day. On the third day, you begin Yukavu Hamayim and the Himoitis, which is the opening words of the fourth day. On the fourth day of the week, on Wednesday, the Anshe Maimed would read Himoitis, which is day number 4, and Yishru Hamayim, day number 5. On the fifth day, you would read from the Chumash what happened on day number 5, which is Yishru Hamayim, and the beginning of day 6, which begins with the words Vatoitzei Haaretz. On Friday, Vatoitzei Haaretz and Vayechulu. And now the Mishnah says, which one of these 2 days was divided into 2 because you called up 3 people? The rule is simple. Whichever one of these 2 is larger, Rashi, the first line under the Mishnah goes into details. I already told you that for the first day, you have 5 psukim. The second day is 3 psukim. So Sunday, the Parsha Gedolah was Bereshis. That you gave to a Kohen and a Levi. Yes, everyone needed 3 psukim. Yes, it meant that pasuk number 3 was the final pasuk read for the Kohen Aliyah, and it was the first pasuk again repeated for the Levi, like we do on Rosh Chodesh. And Baktana, which actually works, right? The second day is 3 psukim was biyach and read for one person. Now, b'shachris u'b'musaf, the reading of the Torah was done not only once, the way we do it now in our Shul Shabbos, no, both on Shachris and on Musaf. By Mincha, interestingly, Nichnasim, they would enter a Shul, not the Beis HaMikdash, and the Koren al Piyam, they would not read it out of a Torah, they would read it by heart, the way you read the Shema. That's the whole topic we learned to place with some brachas, but you have to know why, and we said that that's maybe a reason why the Ashkenazim don't say it with the trop. Maybe that's only if you say it with the trop. Anyways, they read it by heart. However, Erev Shabbos, by Mincha, they Bechlal didn't enter the shul. In other words, not entering the shul doesn't only mean there wasn't the Kli, there wasn't this Baal Peh, Torah reading. The whole Tefilla, including the Kriya, was not done on Mincha because of Kveit Shabbos. People need to have time to prepare for Shabbos. All right, now we're going to see how we get into the whole duchening over here. And Kol Yom Sheyesh Boy Hallel, let's call this the Maimed service. Any day that has Hallel, and we know already that when is Hallel recited, we had a Mishnah on the previous Masechta, right? Or we had it in Taanis, the contrast between Shofar, that is by Musaf, and Hallel is in Shachris, then Ein Maimed B'Shachris. Why? So Rashi explains, look inside Rashi, 5 lines under the Gemara. That will be the logic for all the dinner we're going to learn now. So first of all, Rashi holds that this clause of the Mishnah is only regarding the Anshe Maimed that was in Yerushalayim, right? Oisam Shoyev Yerushalayim, Lo Hoyim Ispalim Al Korban Achayim Sheyesh Boi Hallel. Why? Because Lefi She'ein Lahem Pnai Lasos Ma'amodam. Why? By the simple fact that they have to read the Hallel. And if they have to pick and choose which one to do, Hallel is doicha the maimed. In other words, whenever there was some extra, normally that extra would push out the maimed service. Back in the Mishnah, the same logic that whenever there was a musaf, right, then they would not make the maimed service by ne'ilah. Whenever there was korban eitzim, and that's going to be the continuation of those families that would have their special celebration. And the carbon eitzim, let's go with those who held that you also brought a carbon nadava with the carbon eitzim. So there was additional carbonis. So whenever they needed to stand and watch any additional carbon, so then according to this Tana, according to Rabbi Akiva, they did not do the Maimed service during Mincha. However, Amalei ben Azai, the concept, yes, but the Tefillas, I disagree with you. And I'm going to tell you what Rabbi Yeshua learned. He learned like this, that whenever there was a carbon musaf, right? So carbon musaf, Rabbi Akiva holds, they didn't do the Maimed service by Ne'ilah. That doesn't make sense. It's too far off. Whenever there's a carbon musaf, then because of the extra carbonis by musaf, they were busier by carbon musaf, so they didn't have to make the special Maimed service during Mincha. It's more close. Whenever there was carbon eitzim, obviously carbon eitzim was brought even later. There is where we say that they didn't have to do it by Ne'ilah. And says the Mishnah that ultimately Rabbi Akiva, he retracted his initial opinion, and he ultimately took upon, he began to teach like Benazai. The logic is the same, that whenever there was extra work, the Rashi, for the Maimed that stood in Yerushalayim, there were more karbanos, or they had to say Hallel, so then they didn't have to do the entire Maimed additional service during that period of the day.
And the Maimed in the rest of the country, they would do it regardless of
Rashi,
whether...
Clearly they would. Befedish. I don't know. I don't think all the Rishonim agree with that, but correct. All right. Now that we mentioned carbon eights, and now at least we got the flow. So says the Mishnah that Zman, Atzei, Koyhanim, Veha'am. So this wood celebration wasn't only celebrated by those families, it was also joined by the Kohanim that were doing the Avodah. And again, there is a big machlekes whether these family members only brought wood. We're going to follow the many who hold they brought also special karbanis. So it was like a big to-do. And there's a total of 9 families, which means it's 9 families or 9 times during the year. It's all connected. And Be'echad ben Nisan, B'nei Arach ben Yehuda. Number 2, second family, Be'esrim B'Tammuz. I just want to make something very good observation over here. That means that originally, when there was taka no wood, and when Arach ben Yehuda brought the wood Be'echad ben Nisan, he brought enough wood to last until the 20th of Tammuz, which is a lot of wood. You understand? Now, subsequent years, they didn't celebrate that entire period of time. Their celebration was always Be'echad ben Nisan. But the reason why you only needed the family number 2 to step up to bring wood was because there was enough wood from Bnei Arach until then. Second day was Be'echad b'Tammuz. Who was the family? All of the descendants of David ben Yehuda. Amazing. The schus, Ben Yehuda, by the way, doesn't mean his father's name was Yehuda. Ben Yehuda means he was from the Shevet of Yehuda. But Chamisha Ba'av, that's a much shorter amount of time, came along Bnei Parosh, also from the tribe of Yehuda. And now we have the Shiva boy. Look how many days? 2 days. The Shiva boy b'nei Yoinadav ben Rechav. Interesting, just to point out that doesn't say what tribe. Be'asara boy. 3 days later, b'nei Sena'av ben Minyamin. We've just learned about them here in the Masechta. That's Sena'av ben Minyamin. That since their festival was on the 10th of Av, and when you have a nitcha, you fast on the 10th of Av. So that was that whole topic that they didn't have to be mashlim the fast because it was a nitcha. But Chamisha Aser boy b'nei Zatu ben Yehuda. Now there was something unique on the 15th because who celebrated with them? All of the Kahanim and the Leviim and the Chol Mi Shata'a b'Shiftay. Imagine. They didn't know. No, they didn't know. Taba Shifta, just to make it, doesn't mean he doesn't know what tribe he's from. Taba Shifta means that he knows that he's from one of these 9 families. He doesn't know from which one of these 9 families. So you would think he'll celebrate with all of them. So we say that together with Zatu, which is on the 15th of Menachem Av, that is when the Chol Misha Taba Shifta and also, both B'nei Goinvei Eli means a pestle. There was a family called the Pestle Ganovin. We'll see in the Gemara why. Also, a family called Bnei Koitzei Ketziois, the fig cutters. Again, we'll leave that more. That they also celebrated that Yom Tov together with the Zatu, Bnei Zatu ben Yehuda. Moving on to the next family. Be'esrim by on the 20th of Menachemov, Bnei Pachas Moav, again from the tribe of Yehuda. Be'esrim Be'elul, Bnei Odin ben Yehuda. Now, what happened was, this is amazing. This family, right, the Odin, they brought enough wood that lasted until the first day of Teves. When did you need wood again? On the first day of Teves. When we built the second Beis HaMikdash, there wasn't a 10th family. So now the question was, who will bring it on the first of Teves? So one would think that they would that it would be again the Bnei Anach ben Yehuda. That's not what happened. That when we came to the second round, it was the same 9 families that had the schus. So it happened to be that who did it? The Bnei Parosh, who brought it b'chamisha ba'av. They were the ones that did it again, and that wood lasted until the first of Nisan, so there wasn't a need for any other of these 9 families to do it again. So the Bnei Parosh, Ben Yehuda, they actually had 2 Yom Tovim during the year. And again, since they made a celebration and they brought extra karbanos, so the Bnei Maimon did not have to do the special service ultimately before Ne'ilah. Now, says the Mishnah that the Echad B'Teves, there wasn't a Maimed at all. Aside of the Machlokes we had before Mincha, before Ne'ilah, the Echad B'Teves B'chlal, there was a Maimed service. Why? Because you had Halal, and you had Musaf, and you had Korban Eitzim. Halal, we learned before, takes out the Maimed service of Shachris. Korban Musaf takes out the Maimed during the Musaf. Korban Eitzim takes it out later in the afternoon. Musaf takes it out from Mincha, and everyone was moided to that. It works. Okay. Now, the connection, l'chu'ura. And now we're going into the Pasha, the Siyum of the Masechta.
Rabbi, can you just clarify this family, the Bnei Parosh, so they would cover from Teves all the way back to Nisan?
No. So when we built the second Beis HaMikdash, when we needed the wood, even though there were 9 families that donated wood, they did not donate the same amount. We used their wood until when it ended, and only then did we have to ask for someone else to step up. That's just explaining the distance of the dates, that they're not consistent. But later when we had wood, they only celebrated that day, the day that they brought it. It was a 1-day Yom Tov. Did I answer you? Danny, you good?
No, but I'm just saying, it said that they started it on the 1st of Nisan, right? That's when they started donating.
No, that was Bnei Arach Ben Yehuda, correct.
Right, and so the 9 times, and it finishes up, it says over here with the 1st of Teves.
Because they gave enough wood from the Echad B'Teves, I said that it lasted until Echad B'Nisan.
Okay,
right. Now, L'chu'ura, about Taanis. Taanis is a Masechta that speaks about fast days for calamities. So we began with the calamity of rain. Then we learned a lot about B'chlal, other calamities. And now the Masechta is concluding with 2 national calamities. And the ones that we will focus on is Shiva Asav Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Says the Mishnah that Chamisha Devarim Iruas Aviseinu Shiva Asav Tammuz, and similar, not the same, but there are also 5 events that happened to our forefathers on the day of Tisha B'Av. And now the Mishnah goes, Shiva Asav Tammuz, Chevre Daf Chavav Amid Beis. What happened? Number 1, Nishtabru Haluchais. Number 2, Batal HaTamid. Here we have so many different shitas as to when was the Tamid Batal in the Yerushalmi. They connect the Batal HaTamid to a siege. So we ran out of animals. Now, there itself, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Levi to Amiroim. Rabbi Shimon says in Yerushalmi that the Batal HaTamid was during Malchus Yavan. Part of the celebration of Chanukah was that we were Mechanech by the Chanukah Samizbeach, because we didn't have karbanos, aside of many other issues. And Rabbi Levi holds that it happened during the siege of the Romans. The Rambam writes that Ubatal HaTamid was during the end of the first Beis HaMikdash because of the siege of the Babylonians. And look inside the Rashi, it's a different shita. Rashi, whether it's a Talmud of Rashi, not because of a siege. Rashi says, it's the Romans, but they made a gzeira that we can't bring the Talmud. But when was the first time that we stopped bringing the Talmud? Whenever that happened, that was on the 17th of Tammuz. Number 3, guys, this was breached by the Romans. That's clear. The son of Apostoimus Esatoira. Again, Apostoimus is a Greek name. He burnt a Sefer Torah. What Sefer Torah are we referring to? L'choura, that Ezra, the Sefer, wrote a Sefer Torah. And it was in the Azara. And they burned that Sefer Torah written by Ezra. We used to always authenticate other Sefer Torah by the one written by Ezra. If I'm not mistaken, that was the greatness of the Sefer Torah that we have in the Altanaya Shul in Prague. Right, that's the whole Psuadaka. That it's the way the Alter Rebbe said it is because that Sefer Torah was copied from the Sefer Torah of Ezra. And number 5, Vehemet Selam Behechel. This goes on Apostumus. Now, Tisha B'Av, one of the 5 events that happened on Tisha B'Av, number 1, the Gzeir of God happened after they cried. It happened on the time of Av. Number 2 and number 3, both temples were destroyed on Tisha B'Av. Number 4, Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, let's say in year 69. In the Goyish year of 135, that is when Beitar was conquered by the Romans. And it happened on Tisha B'Av. That's number 4. Number 5, the Nechra Shaha'ir. This is not about Beitar, this is about Yerushalayim. When did Yerushalayim? This also was during the era. This was during the era of the Churban of Beitar, whether it was Turnus Rufus, or here also there are other opinions as to who did it, but the Romans plowed over the whole Yerushalayim. And as we know, after the Mishnah was written, that Gerush Span, the Jews were expelled from Spain on Tisha B'Av, the Gerush of Gush Katif happened on the 9th of Av, on the 10th of Av, the many other calamities happened on this day. And therefore, the Mishnah concludes, Mishanichnas Av, Mematim, the way Hasidim teach, that how do we diminish the Tzaras of Av, Dafka through Simcha, that's permitted, Simcha Shomitz. The way the Rebbe instituted the importance of making Siyumim Dafka during the 9 days. Let's go right. Now, once we mentioned, again, we fast. It's connected to Taanis because we fasted. But let's learn about other Inuyim that we do in connection to Tisha B'Av. Says the Mishnah, Shabbos, Shechal, Tisha B'Av, Liyos B'toicha. This whole idea of adding to mourning from Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av, which is the way we Ashkenazim do, is very important. But it began from the Mishnah. Aside of the 3 weeks, the next step is Shabbos, Shechal, Tisha B'Av, the way the Sfardim do it. What may you not do? Asr milasaper. You can't take a haircut, nor umalachabes, nor can you launder clothing. However, ubachamishi means on Thursday, you are allowed to take a haircut and you are allowed to launder your clothing. Upa adds Rashi. Without Rashi, you'll make a colossal mistake. Rashi, 10 lines from the top. When it says in the Mishnah that on Thursday, doesn't mean any Thursday. Only if Tisha B'Av falls on Friday, then Zakt Rashi, that's where the Mishnah says mutarim lechabes, not a haircut. You can wash your clothing b'chamishi, because since you can't wash your clothing on Friday, which is Tisha B'Av, so you're not going to have clean clothing for Shabbos. But Zakt Rashi ukashachal Tisha B'Av b'dalat b'Shabbos lo yitzrach lemistan the mutarim. We're speaking about Shabbos shechal Tisha B'Av. You understand? So if Tisha B'Av is on Thursday, then you can launder your clothing. Rashi doesn't say take a haircut. You can launder your clothing on when Tisha B'Av is on Friday. Slicha, then you can launder your clothing on Thursday. Back inside the Mishnah, Erev Tisha B'Av, and now we're going to go to really what we call Sudas Hamafsekes. Another stringency. Lo yochel adam shnei tafshilin. Don't eat 2 cooked foods in the meal. Now we have bread and an egg, but don't have an egg and a chicken. Don't have 2 cooked foods. Another din, lo yochel basar v'lo yishteh yayin. This is Erev Tisha B'Av. Don't eat meat, nor are you allowed to drink wine. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees with that. You are allowed to eat meat. You are allowed to drink wine. But Yishana, you have to make a shinoi. We'll leave it for the Gemara to learn exactly what shinoi is he referring to and other details. And now, final din connected to mourning and a big hagdama that in Mayit Katan, when we're going to learn the main topic of dinim, of avelus, there was something that we stopped doing, and it's very strange. But one of the dinim that we no longer do that is spoken about in Chazal is that a person who's in avelus would turn her bed upside down. They would turn it over, called kfiyas samita. Why don't we do it now? The words that we have is that there was a time, a big period of time, where the goyim would kill Jews under the false libel that we were practicing witchcraft. Called the Jewish hat. They put this hat on witches and on Jews to make us look funny. That's the pointy hat. The big pointy Jewish hats came from that. And when they would see us turning our beds upside down, there would be chosheh that we're practicing witchcraft. And that's when the Chachamim, this is in the times of the Rishonim, decided that no one does kfiyas amita. When the Mishnah was written, someone who was in mourning would turn his bed upside down. So now back in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda machayet kfiyas amita. One of the ways we mourn for Tisha B'Av is that everyone turns the beds upside down, as every mourner used to do. However, and now to conclude our Mishnah speaking about fast days and of Taanis, and don't forget, this is the seal in Mishnah is, so says the Mishnah, Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Loyhoyu Yomim Toivim Liyisrael Kechamisha Asar B'Av Uchiyam HaKippurim. And the way Hasidus links that there is a link between this and Tisha B'Av. We're not stop speaking about happy things. Why is it that the happiest day of the year is like Tisha B'Av? I know we're going to learn reasons, but ultimately Hasidus says it's because the greater the Yerida, the greater the Aliyah. And there's no greater Yerida than Tisha B'Av. And we just spoke about Tisha B'Av. But Yerida is Tzorech Aliyah, which is why ultimately the greatest Aliyah will be in the future on Chamisha Asar B'Av and Toyamei Chaim Zochu. Even in Golus, even before the building of the third Beis Hamikdash on Mashiach, there's already such a great Aliyah in the Kaimos Yihada Ba'ashlemusa that the moon is completed, and the greater the lack means the greater the completion. That is B'Chamisha Asar B'Av and on Yom Kippur. What happened during both of these days? Shebohen, the noise, Yerushalayim, Yoitzes, B'Chaylav, and She'ulim. This is not a celebration of all of the Jewish people. For here, you have to be a Yerushalayim. That they would borrow white linen garments. Why linen garments? Because they wanted to make sure that everyone should be dressed the same. Not everyone was able to afford garments. Shelo Yevayish es Misha Elon. On the other hand, the moment you borrow garments from other women, not everyone was that medagdek in the dinim of Nida. Today, Nida, of course, Nida, separation of couples, everyone keeps to that. We're speaking about dinim Tuma and Tara. A non-Kohen didn't have to abide by the laws of Tuma and Tara, but many people did. So to make everyone Torah, and speaking especially also on Yom Kippur, so Kol HaKelim Tu'ulim Tefilla. Don't presume that who gave it to you, that threw a person in Nea Sha'arim. No, you don't know. Maybe they didn't keep the dinim properly of keeping things Torah, because you don't have to. So everyone would borrow clothing and they would take it to the mikveh. We're not speaking about the whole procedure that you have to do to that which became tummy from Tumas Meis. We're speaking about Tumas Nida. All you need to do is take it to the mikveh and wait until night. And if it's Tumas, no, or if it's Tumas, if a Nida is Metama by MERCAVA Moshe, then it's 7 days, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, very good. Now, B'nai Yisraelim, again, on both of these Yamim Tovim, now that they had these white garments, Yoitzois v'choylois bakramim, they would go and dance in circles in the vineyards. And what would they say? So we're going to begin, and we're going to learn more details later in the Gemara, that really there were 3 groups of women, of young women, bachelorettes, if that's the word, women that are looking for a shidduch, and they would say, make sure you pick correctly. And one of the groups would say, obviously, who said that? This was said by the women, that they were not so beautiful, but they had good yichus. And to back up this statement, a pasuk said by King Solomon, what do you want? Isha yiras Hashem hitisalo. Now really, if they're asking to look at mishpacha, Isha Yiras Hashem is not necessarily to relate it to a woman that has good yichus, but we'll see there's groups. One group will say, if I don't have beauty and if I don't have yichus, I have yiras shamayim, I have inner beauty, and that is what we should praise. That give her the fruits of her hands. The hallelujah b'sha'arim masel. And in other words, when people praise others for what they do, that creates a healthy society. Because people want to be praised. So we should praise people for what they do, for their actions, which is an expression of the Yiras Hashem. And that's the greatest value that all people have, including women. And a lot more of that in the Gemara. Go forth and look deeply. The nice Tzion, oh, you daughter of Tzion, a Melech Shloimoi. Melech Shloimoi is a metaphor to God Almighty. King Solomon was adorned with the crown that his mother made for him. I want you to know that we learned a lot of my Mordechay Hasidus, that we are called God's daughter, which we are. We are called God's wife, which we are. And sometimes we are called God's mother. So this pasuk, the Melech is Melech Shahasholoi, Sholoi, God Almighty. And there is a crown that the Jewish people, Kavayachal, make to God. And when do we offer God that crown? B'yoyim chasunasai and u'b'yoyim simchas libay. B'yoyim chasunasai refers to Matan Torah. B'yoyim Matan Torah refers, let's go, there's so many different Rishonim. Let's go one derech. Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur is Matan Torah. Taken not the Luchas Rishonis, but Luchas Shniyos. And you see from this pasuk that there is a Tze'enu Re'enu B'noi Tzion. There's a special celebration, there's a special connection between husband and wife, between God and the Jewish people, between potential couples. When do we celebrate that? B'yom Chazanos is Man Yom Kippur. And let's at least go with the Marsha that says, Ubiyom Simchas Liboy refers to being in Beis HaMikdash, who he understands is referring to Chamisha Asa B'Av. Now, that's not what the Tosfos Yontif writes. Many other Rishonim say that both of them go to Yom Kippur, and a lot more in the Gemara. And Sheyibana b'Meheira b'Yameinu. So that was the Messiah in the Torah that we have in the Mishnah. We're going to come back to this whole dancing on and the Yom Tov, both Yom and Tovim of Chamisha Asa B'Av and Yom Kippur. But first, the opening line in the Mishnah. Let's see how far we can get. The Mishnah began by saying, "B'shloisha parakam bashana kohanim loisim es kapayim," and the point we made is that normally they don't duchen on mincha. They don't duchen on mincha because they can't duchen when they're shaker. But there were 3 times of the year that they duchen all of the tefillas. But then the Mishnah went on to count what are all the tefillas, shachris, musav, mincha, ne'ilah. That doesn't work because yes, Yom Kippur we have 4 tefillas, but on Tainiyos and Mamodos we don't have 4 tefillas. So answers the Gemara, and this is what makes these 3 parakim different than all other times of the year. What is Kol Zman Shemispalalim? Shachris, Mincha, Me'ilah. That is consistent with all of the 3 dates the Mishnah gives. And on Yom Kippur, there's not a 4th. The Yesh Mem Arba Pa'amim Bayoim, which is on Yom Kippur, you also have a Musaf. Shachris and Musaf Mincha Ne'ilah, or Ne'ilah Sha'arim. The Elohim Shloisha Parakim, Tainiyos, Mamodos, the Yom HaKippurim. All right. Now, just to say that when it comes to the Mamodos, my friends, what did we learn in our Mishnah? That they only fasted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Here we're saying that they added a tefillah of Ne'ilah. There's a machlokes in Rishonim whether the Mamodos, we're speaking here about Ne'ilah, was it only said when they fasted? Or was it also said, the Ne'ilah was said also on Sunday and Friday? Be that as it may, the point of the Mishnah is that what's unique about these 3 dates is that Nesias Kapayim happened during all of the tefillahs. So on that, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua, we should know, let's chaparan as much as we can get, that our sheet is only Rabbi Meir. Avol Chachamim Oimrim Shachris Musav Yesh Nesias Kapayim. And never is there Nesiyas Kapayim, not by Mincha or not by Ne'ilah. There's no Ne'ilas Kapayim. So first of all, who is the Chachamim? Says the Gemara, it's Rabbi Yehuda. And actually, we're going to quote a Braisa that will have three opinions. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi Mamish, the way we began the daf, the three shitas. Our Mishnah had Tanach and Rabbi Eliezer, and here we have Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya, Shachris Umusav Mincha Ne'ilah. That's Rabbi Meir. Kulam yesh vahem nesiyas kapayim. When you're fasting, let's go. Give it Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. Oimer, no. Shachris Umusav. There's nesiyas kapayim. Mincha ne'ilah ein vahem nishum ein vahem nesiyas kapayim. That's the chachamim. And now the third opinion Rabbi Yossi holds ne'ilah. There is nesiyas kapayim when there's a fast, but on mincha there isn't. And the Gemara explains the underlying machlekes. And by Michael Mifligi, Rav Meir holds kol yoima tamamai leparsi kahanan yadai b'minchasa mishum shichrus, as we'll continue learning in the next year. Ha'idno, when you're fasting, there's no shichrus. People are not allowed to eat, they're not allowed to drink, so there's no worry. Takaduch. By the way, our minig is that on a fast day, the shliach tzibur says for this reason. Rabbi Yehuda holds shachris umusaf. Yes, since the Chol Yoim L'Shiach Shichrus L'Gazer Barabanan Mincha Ne'ilah, even on a fast day, even though no one will be drunk on that day, but since the Chol Yoim Shchicha Shichrus, so Gazer Barabanan, people are going to get confused if they're going to say it Mincha on a fast day, they're going to do it during a non-fast day. And Rabbi Yossi holds as a compromise. Mincha, which is said every single day, even during a fast day, we are afraid Gazer Barabanan. But Ne'ilah, the list of the Chol Yoim L'Gazer Barabanan, it fits. And let's just finish. Who do we pass like? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Halacha ki Rabbi Meir. That what? That Birchas Kehanim is said in those Sfardim, and those who have a minute to say it during a fast day, they say it by every single tefillah. Rabbi Yechanan says, look at the words, Nohagu ha'am ki Rav Meir, not Hilchasa, but no, that the people act in accordance, and Rabbi holds, Minag ki Rav Meir. What does it mean? We had this a few times, but the other times before we learned Rashi. This is the Gemara. Man the Amar Halacha ki Rav Meir. That means that the Rashin Allah Bepirka, that when you give a shiur, you announce it. You everyone should know about it because we are certain this is the halacha. The one that says minhag, who's that? Who says the words minig?
Rava.
I'm sorry, Rava. Minhag means that we don't darshan it in public, but if someone asks you individually what the din is, you tell him oiruye moirinan. As an interesting psak din. Oiruye moirinan zakrashi kirab meir I asal kaman avol bepirko loy darshinan de loy pshito le kula hayu. We're not that certain. So if someone asks you, even though you're not certain, say like Rav Meir, but don't preach it in public. Uman the Omar Nohago, that's Rabbi Yechanan. He means even more that because he uses the words that Nohagu ha'am, it makes sense. It's mashmad. People do. That's not, in other words, we wouldn't even tell a person one-on-one. Elama, if someone already did it, we don't stop them. We don't tell them to desist doing it. These are the three shitas. Rav Nachman Amar, Halacha ki Rabbi Yossi, that what, interestingly, that it's said by Ne'ilah, not by Mincha, and the Gemara concludes by saying, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. We'll stop over here, and God willing to be continued.
Shkoyach. Rabbi, it's like saying Tachnon on Gimel Tammuz. I think it's the same idea. Is it a minute? Do you ask? Do you?
So, depends. Three shitas.